I'm pleased to say that Shaun joins me live in the studio now. Shaun, thank you so much for coming
Thank you for inviting me, Nana. By the way, I'm not a former chaser, I'm still a chaser.
You're still a chaser. Don't tell me you're a former... Because I used to watch it all the time.
Yeah.
And my son, Ivory, he's only 5, but he was watching it all the time, and my ex loved the show. Talk to me about how you came to be on it and what it's like.
Well, what happened at the end of 2008, when I lost the Eggheads Grand Final, I was then contacted by TV to take part in what they considered to be, quote, an exciting new game show concept. So I went along for the audition. So I'm the world's first chaser, actually. So I was working on that show by myself for about 4 months. Then in the spring of 2009, they brought in Mark, the Beast, the Bet. We then went up to do a pilot at the old Granada TV shows, and 13 years later, here we still are.
It's such a simple concept, but yet it works so well.
Yeah.
It's the basic, isn't it? It's easy.
It is. It's because of the fact that, you know, we've got a fantastic host who's witty, spontaneous, ad-lib. And also in relation to the fact that, although you don't see it behind the scenes, you know, from the person who runs to get us the coffee right up to the chasers, we respect each other. And I think that reflects and comes out in each episode.
Yeah, that's really good. And long may that show continue. Now, I know that you're also a part-time lecturer. You lecture in schools, things like that?
Yes, as I say, only last week I was at the Open University, because with fame comes responsibility, and it's important that I use my fame in an altruistic way to try and put the ladder of opportunity for the next generation of lawyers, chasers, Nobel Prize winners to actually climb up and, you know, take over when people like me are long shuffled off this small world.
I try that. I lecture in schools all the time. They go, "Oi, are you that bird on GBNews?" It doesn't work as well as being a chaser, I'm afraid to say. Now, you went on Mastermind. You were ranked, I think it was 286th in the World Quizzing Championships as well. I've always wanted to go on Mastermind. I know that your subject was about FA Cup, wasn't it, FA?
It was, but, you know, as I say, people might sort of denigrate the fact that it wasn't sort of, you know, on classical history or chemistry, but, you know, it still took the same intellectual rigour to actually, you know, every fact or figure which I could be asked, and I became the first black person to apply, let alone win the championship. So it was a great honour for me personally, for my family, but more importantly for the black community, because it showed that we do have the same intellectual capacity as our white counterparts.
All right, well, I've got a couple of questions for you then. I brought up mine as well, why not? Who won the FA Cup final then in 1971?
Arsenal. The goal scorers were Steve Highway, scored after extra time. Then Eddie Kelly became the first substitute to score. Then Charlie George hit the winning goal to give Arsenal the double.
I wish I'd brought my buzzers. I have buzzers as well. That's so annoying. All right, then what about in 1984? A very poignant year.
1984, that was Everton 2, Watford 0. The goal scorers were Andy Gray and Graham Sharp.
Wow. All right. 1999, the turn of the century.
That was Newcastle United 2, Newcastle United 0, Manchester United 2. Teddy Sheringham came on about 5 seconds after becoming a substitute. He scored the first goal, and Paul Scholes got the second goal to give Man United the second leg of the famous treble.
Oh, my God, an easy one then. 2021.
2021 was when we got turned over. You know, obviously I'm a big Chelsea fan, and we lost to Liverpool. No, 2021, did you say?
Yeah. So
2021 was when Leicester beat us 1-0. I'm still smarting about that, because I still think that in the build-up to that fantastic goal by Tielemans, there was a handball which should have been given. But, you know, even though we lost that FA Cup, we then went on to win the Champions League.
I'll give him a round of applause at home. That's pretty good, just on the cuff. He didn't know that was going to happen. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And you also, weren't you a finalist on the first series of Are You an Egghead as well?
Yeah, because after winning Mastermind, I retired from quizzing, because they weren't going to let me on shows like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Of course not.
You know, so I then decided to retire, but the BBC asked me to come out of retirement. And I got all the way to the grand final, and I was the only contestant out of the 32 who had to play the quarter-final, semi-final and final all in one day, because I could hardly say to a judge, by the way, Your Honour, can I simply nip out so I can do a quiz show? You would have told me where to get off, so...
What's it like being a barrister? I always wanted to do that sort of thing, because I used to watch Crown Court when I was young.
Well, that's what inspired me.
All the time.
That's what inspired me. I used to watch Crown Court, and one of my great legal heroes growing up as a young kid was the great John Mortimer KC. And one of the reasons why he was a hero of mine is because he was one of the top lawyers in his day, but he used his transferable skills as a barrister to become an accomplished author. And obviously, Horace Rumpole, although a fictional character, again, is one of my heroes. So
Isn't that amazing? I used to love that. And I was only young. Sometimes I'd try and get off school, pretend to be sick, and I'd watch that. And my mum said, no, you're not bored of this. I used to love it.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic show. So being a barrister, what was your view on there was the strikes?
Well, as I say, I was firmly in favour of the strike. As I say, I still think that we settled far too early, unquote, because of the fact that we need to actually support the fact that the legal aid services is chronically underinvested and has been so for the last 30 or so years, mainly due to, as I say, in my view, some of the sort of negative headlines certain sections of the press were portraying that the barristers were fat cat lawyers who were earning money off the public purse, and nothing could be further from the truth. And as I say, the bar has been, in terms of its diversity, in terms of talent, we've seen a paradigm shift in that. But we've also seen the fact that, young lawyers have been earning something like less than £6.75 per hour. And what we're basically seeing is a drainage of talent in terms of young people being deterred from coming to the bar. We're seeing a collapse in morale in terms of experienced lawyers who basically are at the end of their tether. And if we don't actually invest in what was once considered to be the benchmark of all legal professions around the world, the legal profession will simply wither on the vine and die.
See, now I was until the strike, I was of the illusion that they were paid a fortune, and they were paid really well. And I think now that has happened, people have realised that is actually an illusion, and it's not really the way it is.
Absolutely.
Now, I know you do a lot of charity work, so talk to me about some of the stuff that you've been doing and why.
Why?
To do that?
Because with fame comes responsibility, and I know what it was like to need help and assistance, and I think everybody has a special responsibility to try and help the next person who's less fortunate than themselves. So, as I said, a dear friend of mine, Jenny Roberts, asked me a couple of years ago to get involved in, raising awareness in relation to the chronic problems so far as homelessness is concerned. And we went up to northeast of London, northeast of England, in Newcastle, to actually open some homes and projects, and to see the joy on the face of the people. To actually have a stable home, a stable environment was just fantastic. And it's important that those type of plights and other institutions who do need help, I will always use my fame in a way to try and help them. On Thursday, I'm going to be hosting a quiz to try and raise money for a cancer trust. And I think the way, because of the fact that I'm known as a quizzer, that's where I like to try and raise funds. A dear friend of mine, we hosted a quiz called it's called the Wonky Heart Foundation for a dear friend of mine who's a judge called Karen Holt. And we raised £7,000, not only for problems so far as heart's concerned, but also in relation to people who sadly committed suicide. So it's important for me to actually use my fame to try and shine a spotlight on charities or small organisations who do need vitally needed funds, which were obviously devastated, especially in relation to the pandemic which we've recently come out of. And I'll always continue to do so in my own way.
Can people? Is there a website people can?
They can always contact. As I say, they can always contact my agents if they need help or assistance. And as I say, it doesn't cost anything to try and help a person who's less fortunate than yourselves. It doesn't cost anything.
Well, throughout your career, because you've done so much, and a lot of people...
I've still got a lot to do.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. And people will see you as an inspiration and a role model.
Well, I don't like to use that phrase, role model. No, I like to use that phrase, goal model. Goal model. Goal model
instead.
Yeah, because of the fact that, I'm human just like anybody else. I can make mistakes just like anybody else. And, when people put you on this pedestal, the fall from grace can be swift and unrelenting if you are on that pedestal as a role model.
Yeah,
so I'm comfortable closer to the floor. So, follow the goals that I set so you can actually use those to inspire yourselves to actually reach your own goals and ambitions.
What would you say is your biggest goal so far?
I would imagine the biggest goal I've achieved would be qualifying as a barrister, because as an 11-year-old boy, I was like Muhammad Ali. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be the greatest. And if you talk the talk, you've got to be able to walk the walk. And as I say, 40 years ago, educational standards had a low expectation of people of colour. If you're a young black boy, they expected you to either work in a factory, drive buses at best, or be living, sadly, in a prison. And if you're a young black girl, they expected you to either be a typist or secretary, or sadly living in a high-rise council flat with loads of children running around your ankles with no visible means of a man to support you. So any dreams or ambitions of being a doctor, lawyer, or dentist were seen as a complete anathema.